Hi guys, welcome back to Let It Out with Sadiq. Our guest today, we have a special guest, a legend, pro tennis player, all African legend. Our guest today is Takanyi Garanganga. TK, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Sadiq. I know we've met several times when you're a lot younger, but now we're here in New York, and thank you for inviting me on your podcast. I know you've got a great following that's coming up. But,
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I must give you like your flowers before we start. So I tested TK, was it 3 days ago? I was like,
Right.
yo, I'm doing this podcast. Can you come on it? It's like, what is it about?
Yeah.
What are you doing? And guess what? It's here 2 days later. So thank you again for accepting the invitation to come on this platform.
Right.
For our viewers that do not know who you are, could you please introduce yourself?
Well, normally what happens is like you introduce yourself with your name. I'm Takanyi Garanganga. I was given that by my family, but I look a lot deeper into that. But in general, I'll give you the regular narrative. I was born in Zimbabwe. I am now 35 years old, born in 1990. My hometown's in Harare. I was born in Mbare, which is like the inner city, which you call here in the US. And then over the years, I've just, got a feeling of playing tennis. My father is a tennis player, and then my mom works for corporate government and stuff. And then my brother is also a tennis player, but now he's retired. But it's been a tennis family for several years, and then here I am. Yeah.
Welcome to the show again. Takanya, you've represented Zimbabwe in the world stage. You got to top 288 in the world.
Right.
Could you please tell us the journey, how you got to that level?
You make it sound like it's super amazing, but it's just
288 ATP
No,
in the world.
No, I think it was just
I'm
part of the
sure.
journey.
Yeah.
For what has happened. I mean, I can speak on just like starting off from being like thinking about how am I even going to get a 1 point on the ATP. But when you do that, I think we're just limited just being from the part of the world we're in. You feel like having a ranking is like a big thing, or winning like maybe 2 rounds in a professional event on the minor leagues. So you're kind of like inundated with that part, which was like, I think it limited me. I think being like a top 10, top 20 player, when I look at it, which changed when I was 24, 25, but I don't want to say it was late, but I kind of took things in my own hands. But being a 288 was just, I think it is not my best of what my vision was.
You could have achieved more.
Right, correct. But just the pathway just didn't have the best guidance in terms of getting there.
Like let's bring it all back to where it started, right? How did this journey, right, to become a tennis player, how did it begin?
It came through jealousy, which is not the best way of getting things to be done. My brother was a tennis player, so like I mentioned, my dad was also like a tennis fan, so they watched tennis, but my brother's 10 years older than me. So obviously you're spending time with my dad, and I wanted to fit in. You're gonna follow up, hey, you're playing tennis, I'm gonna play too, that kind of thing. So it started off like that, but you don't realize it, but you just because of that curiosity, you start playing a lot, and you have social games on Sundays. I'm sure in Nigeria you had that when people like the older guys are playing on a Sunday or Saturday. So they played that, and then other kids came by, and then after that it's like I picked up on it, started playing junior tournaments, junior tournaments from there. People said I was a good player, but didn't know what a good player is, and it just kind of built from there. Right.
You've always been like among your age, you've always been like good top players among your age at that age, at that young age.
Big lie if I'd say that, because like it has been a situation where like I was a little bit chubby, to be honest, when I was a kid.
Really?
I was a little bit chubby.
Oh, wow.
I did enjoy having like food, snacks. Kids do like that, but people just thought that like this guy's soft. He comes from probably like the better side of the African families. So
what age was this?
Yeah, that's a little tricky, because that part is very tricky for people to understand, because that's where the complexity from where I am now and how I relate with so many different people. Because I was actually born in the inner city of Zimbabwe, Mbare, which is like
Mbare.
where most of the people, like, you know, in Zimbabwe or Rhodesia, it used to be called, you had the better part of let me say that the upper echelon, and the African people had the not the best side. So that's where I was born. But then obviously my parents like worked hard and stuff like that, so they were able to create a pathway to be like, okay, we gotta leave here and go to another part. But I still kept in touch with my roots. So I had that mixture very young, between like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. I mixed between like being on the harder side of Zimbabwe and then the better side of Zimbabwe. So you had that mixture, you know. So it's not a one size fits all. Yeah.
Coming from Zim, what were some of your challenges growing up as a tennis player?
I think it goes back to your previous question, like when you're saying like, you know, how did you start playing tennis? And you know, and I told you I was like a little bit chubby because people just didn't think like I was good enough tennis player. You know, just the stereotype of he's good, he can play, he's got equipment. Because my father, you know, which is very difficult for a lot of African parents, he wanted to provide a lot for me to be able to play the sport. He was limited in the knowledge of the sport, but he was very passionate about it. So for me, you know, the challenges were not so much about, you know, having the equipment to play the game back in the 90s, but it was just like people not accepting me, maybe the academies at the very early stage, because they're like, he's not good enough. But then from then onwards, I just, you know, just worked hard, you know, just played every day, just enjoyed the game. And, you know, maybe when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, things started changing a little bit.
I think I was listening to this guy, Nick Curious, that said something about like he was chubby at that age, like similar that, but it's like amazing how things work if you put your mind to it. Like doesn't matter where you are right now, but what do you want to achieve and all of that.
No, but that's a little bit tricky, because when you're looking at it, it goes back to the whole pathway that you probably are trying to put in your podcast. How does African tennis get to a stage where it's like really global and people recognize? So with Nick, I'm sure like he's had a lot of challenges in his career that has motivated him to get to where he is, and they still motivate him even to now that we may not know about. But from our perspective, we didn't have those big role models. You know, from what you're looking at, you know, they had the Leighton Newitts, Patrick Rafter, the trailblazers, the Australian Open. They had, that's something that's in their mind. But when you look at it back home, there's not really a big tournament. Well, back home in Africa as a whole, there's not really that big tournament when you're gonna be like, hey, I want to be the one who's being top 10 at the end of the year Masters. It's not part of your agenda. It doesn't matter. Eastern Bloc, Djokovic has all of those because he wants to win Wimbledon. It's the topic of that part of the world. But in Africa, we don't really have that big. Doesn't have to be a grand slam, but in your backyard, it's not something that you actually conceptualize and say, I'm chasing this, you know. So it's a little bit tricky when it comes to that.
But what a junior, what a start, what a way, you know, to get into the game and become this big household name for Africa.
Right.
Junior, I was looking, so I did a little bit of stalking last night.
I
did last night, I did a little bit of stalking.
Right.
Actually, today I was like, what? I know him. I said, well, what else do I need to know about him? But so you were world number 17.
Right.
In juniors ITF, world number 17. The other day I had my friend was he did world number 41, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, but what was it like being the world number 17 at that age? You beat like Dimitrov, you know.
Yeah.
So during that, how old were you then? And what was it like being world number 17? And you know, it's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Should I let you answer or should I just file them up? No, because I want to know. I'm sure, like
you
guys want to know as well. So my question number one is, what was it like being world number 17 junior ITF?
Right.
Secondly, beating players like Dimitrov and all of those players. Did you ever see you like damn, like say I'm 17 in the world, I'm going all the way to be 17 in the ATP? Was it like that, being 17 in the world? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna be top 10
Yeah.
at least, you know,
Yeah.
top 20 at least in the world. What was it like?
No, I think those are some of the glass ceilings we do have in African tennis, because there's this structure that you have, like the junior. It's a good starting point. Being world number 17, I don't knock it off like it's nothing.
Yeah.
But when I look at it, I'm like, man, why didn't I just even start thinking about being world number one at a young age? You know, which is something where you're like, okay, I think the person who was world number one at that time, Ricas Barranquez at that time, I had beaten him, but why did I not conceptualize that idea of being world number one? Because it's like where we're from, it's like, no, we have this guy. I think I don't knock that down. I think at that time Christian Vituli was in my age bracket. He went to University of Georgia. He was like top 15 or something, and that was a guy you're trying to like look up to, but you don't know what he was looking up to. So that's always a story. So when I say I'm world number 17, it's more like it's a good thing, but I still feel like I sold myself short. And then beating like Dimitrov and all of those guys, like Barranquez was not. These guys end up being all top 100 in tennis. But when you beat them, it's like, to me, it was just a match. I'm playing a match. It wasn't like, oh my God, this guy, because they also already have their own pathway. They have a team that's trying to create like a pathway for them to be like, hey, listen, you're gonna play junior tennis. You're gonna get to this point. You're gonna play challenger tennis. You're gonna play futures. You're gonna play ATP events. You're going to go this pathway. This is what their storyline is like, whether they knew it or not.
At
Yeah.
that
At
age,
that
they
age.
have this pathway, this set
Of
at
course,
that age.
of course, of course, of
Wow.
course. When
Wow.
this is me now thinking about it more in depth. They had that, because I remember I was like, okay, yes, Dimitrov. I saw him in Dallas Challenger, which I was like, okay, man, I just want to qualify in a Dallas Challenger event. But he was playing that, and I overheard a conversation that they were having. This is like in the players' lounge or whatever. They're talking about playing like they're looking at playing in Stockholm tournament, which was in October. Dallas Challenger was in like February, March.
Right? Yeah,
And they're talking about that, and I'm like, oh, Stockholm in October. Like, so they're thinking about that. But for me, it was more like, there's a tournament, like, that goes back even deeper. There's a tournament in the US. I'm based in the US. There's this, assumption, because you don't have that guidance. In the US, because it's a tough event. But if I look at it, I should have never been playing in the US. I should have been like playing globally, even at a young age, on the professional tour. So that pathway is not something that we are really considering very much from the tennis perspective for the junior players. So 17 is a good thing, but I sold myself short. I think it would have been better. Right. Yeah.
Wow. I'm like speechless, but but I mean, it's still like, I'm sure a lot of players, myself, I would be like 17 in the world. I would celebrate that, but again,
of course.
a lot of people looking up to you, coming from Zim, right? One of the few players that got to that level, if I'm not mistaken. If maybe the only, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know much about Zim history of tennis, right? But where would you say, mold you to become that player? That is it Zimbabwe? Was it because you left for the US? So where did you know?
That's a big story, because I mean, I just did my work day to day, like every day, but we have had like legends who have been world number one, and that was Baron Black, Wayne Black, Cara Black. They have been like globally superstars in the doubles arena, also singles. I would think be top 20 in the world like Baron is like a big thing, even Wayne to be top 100. So these are the people you had in Zimbabwe, and Davis Cup was really one of those main events that created a good tennis community in Zimbabwe. But when I look at it, I wasn't necessarily motivated by Davis Cup.
No.
This is when you're very young and you're starting the game. You went to these events. It was more like, you're meeting your friends, you're doing this. It's a community, it's like a platform, and you do it. But in a sense, I think there was that disconnect between them being global superstars by all rights in their pathway, and then where tennis is in Zimbabwe. There's that gap. So what happened is that when I started traveling in the US, playing the Challenger Tour, because you have the ATP Tour, Challenger Tour, Future Tour. So I kind of graduated from the Future Tour, spending more time in the Challenger Tour. And then I did see that Wayne, Barron, and them were playing, like, I think I saw it in like a billboard where people have won tournaments. Wayne Black had won a tournament in a Challenger tournament in Champaign, Illinois, or somewhere in Chicago. I don't know, somewhere in the US, yes. So I'm like, where is this story in between Davis Cup, them being Challenger players to be ATP, and then we're here? Because Davis Cup is like the end game for tennis. So there's that disconnect there, which I felt like it's not really the pathway, the story. What is Wayne and Byron doing 30, 40 weeks out of the year? Because the ATP event is like, 50 weeks out of the year. What are they doing? We don't know that as the rest of the tennis world in Zimbabwe. So those are the things that are really missing for tennis. So when I was looking at it, it was like, I was really like sort of like navigating by myself to figure out how I get there. I do see this. I'm like, okay, it means this. So you're like, okay, I'm changing my goal now. I gotta be here. So those are like very tricky parts. Now as an advisor to somebody who wants to play, that's something I can kind of tell them, like, listen, you just gotta shoot for the moon, not in a haphazard way, but in a way where like, hey, you've graduated from here, play this, play that. This is where we need to go. Right.
TK.
Right.
You, I mean, at that level, world number 17, you played Grand Slams, US Open, French Open, Wimbledon.
Right.
Yeah. What would you say was your favorite Grand Slam at that junior level, and why?
That's a tough one, though, man. I mean, because it was also all new to me. You're absorbing the energies and I mean, the one I do remember is like I had an evening match. I don't know, because it's afternoon. You know how the sun gets late, but we were in like Suzanne Langland, which is one of the French Open stadiums. It's a famous stadium there. And then I was getting ready for a match, and then the person I do meet before his match was David Ferrer.
Oh, David Ferrer.
We're in the same, lounge at that time. He's like with his team. I'm there getting ready, and I end up playing a match with a guy who ended up winning French Open at match points against him. Right, and I lost that. And David Ferrer comes and asked me yesterday, because we had I'm like pretty like an open dude. We'll chat, like, anyway, it seems like, hey, how did you do your match? Like, I lost yesterday, but I had match points. The guy ended up winning French Open, and David, it still sticks with me today. So French Open was a place where I sort of like connected with someone. And then I was walking through like a player's lounge, and then I met Monfils there. He had like a crazy hairstyle at that time. And then it was like, he just gave me like a nod. And I was like, well, flip, this guy noticed me. You know what I'm saying? But that's like back then, like you're not absorbing that as in like, dude, you actually belong here. It's more like, wow, okay, what's happening here? And I feel like that's a thing. Then I met Monfils maybe and Tsonga and them like 10 years, 15 years later in Rotterdam. And I actually warmed up with them and practiced with them. But these things that you're going through. So French Open was a very significant event for me. US Open, I played it a few times, but they were still reconstructing the locker room for the juniors at that time. So it wasn't like as fun, but it seemed like it was a nice event. And then Wimbledon was like, it's like a prestigious event, but then for me, it was more like, I was actually coming from an injury the week before. I had like a hairline fracture on my pinky bone to play, so I almost missed that tournament because I was part of the ITF touring team. So I was actually just trying to get me to hit tennis balls, so I wasn't thinking about anything more than that. Those Grand Slams were like I was really absorbing the energy, what's going on, but it wasn't me being comfortable in that hole. world, and I feel like it does a disservice for us as the African community to like not really let our juniors like fit in those shoes and get better than that, man.
If you were to look back, if you were to look back on your career,
Right.
what is your biggest moment?
Look, that's another one of setting yourself, just because I've been in like, to win a tournament, there's a lot that happens behind the scene. Just your nerves being the smallest part, just your travel to the place, just how you're feeling when you land in a place, just how you're feeling in your first practice sessions and how you overcome that. So there are little tournaments that I've played and I've won. And I think that those were like very important for me, just for my personal growth. But when spectators look from it, they're like, oh no, there's like,
But
then I think
they
like,
expect you to win it, or it's just a regular local tournament.
So there are those ones. But I think the one that sticks out is just winning a gold medal for African tennis, like All African Games.
All African Games.
Yeah, 2011 in Maputo. Yes, that's just because I don't think there was any gold medalists in Zimbabwe at that time for that in tennis specifically.
This is bigger than also like you're doing for the whole country, I guess. Carrying the country's flag. Was that?
It's important to look at it in hindsight. You're doing it for the country's flag, but when you're doing it, it's like you're there just being professional, right? You're there just being professional, and the result that you get is maybe what everybody thinks like, no, you're doing it for the country and stuff, which I'm not saying, you love your country because that's what you're branded by. But when you do your work on a day-to-day, like there's a TV show that I do, like I'll quote that, they say, in a world of a gladiator, fame and glory constructs its own truth. So whatever you do as a gladiator, as an athlete, day to day, but anything that comes around that, people talk about that. It constructs its own truth. So you looking at it like that, for me, is what your imagination has. But at that moment when I was doing that, there was like, TK, just go through that, go through the day, do what you gotta do, get out of there, tomorrow go recover, you gotta do this tomorrow and do that. Anything that comes after that, it's more like, hey, TK did this, but it's not really like that. I don't want to take that like, oh no, I'm bravado. It is like this. It's not really from my perspective. It could be different from other people, right?
TK, I'm not sure. Growing up, right, and I heard a lot about it. There's the ITF Center in South Africa.
Right.
Were you ever part of that center?
No. I was never part of the ITF. Well, I moved to the US when I was 13. And I think the ITF normally takes you when you're just getting into like that 13-year-old age. But 13. I've always been in connection with a lot of ITF being the directors, it being the players, people who are running the facility. We've always had a cordial relationship over the years. So I was never been physically there, but when I was in that region, they would, allow me to come and, train and practice with them.
This would lead to my next question. The ITF Center played and plays up to now, because they still have it, right? A big impact in developing junior players from Africa.
Right.
I know back then they have in South Africa, they have in Senegal, I believe, and I think one North Africa.
Right?
Yeah, if I'm not.
I think they took the one out in Southern Africa now.
Yeah, right. And Senegal, I believe, or it's still there. But what do you think, or how should I put it? I'm trying to say, what do you think the ITF, is it the ITF or the Confederation of African Tennis, what can they do to bring those centers back across Africa? When I mean across Africa, having one in South Africa, one in East Africa, North Africa, West Africa.
Right. I think they just have to really sit down and reconstruct their vision of why they have those. right? It's, to me, junior tennis, the highest level of junior tennis is playing junior tennis, is playing junior Grand Slams, because you get to have those experiences that I've just mentioned, that I was able to have. That's important. It's a very big part about it. But it shouldn't end there, and I'm not the first person to say it. It should go beyond just playing like junior tennis and ITF having a center, because they train by the time they're 18. It's like, hey man, I'm 18, I've not really even constructed my own experiences in life, and you're asking me to make a decision. Am I going to school? Am I going to this? You have not given him that experience of traveling around the world in terms of like the professional. You're traveling around the world as a junior player, you're catered for. But now as a professional athlete, you're training somewhere in court number 18. There's no one. You're booking a court. You're in a place where there's like 4, 6, 7, 8 courts. There's like a portable bathroom there. You want them to, they do experience that as a junior player in some African countries, but as a professional player, they don't experience that yet. So they got to understand that, man, even after out of this, there's still that stage you got to do. So ITF has to be in a situation where you want to give them a full experience of the way they give the junior Grand Slam that experience for them to do that. There has to be that experience that they do have in the professional atmosphere. And then from then onwards, it's just not a training center. It's really more adequate funding. I cannot stress enough of that, because you have adequate funding, you have the family that supports you, and you have the right schedule for you to be able to play the right tournaments. Those are the things I've learned in my personal life. You have the ITF Center, which has gave me a platform to train. My family was always there supporting me, but I lacked in scheduling things the right way, because we did not have that advice or guidance for that.
You were not part of the ITF Center. I know what that center, of course, with the North Africa, they develop, a lot of players comes out of there. You moved to the US at the age of 13.
Right.
Where did you train and work?
This is where it's like been one of my greatest, for lack of a better word, asset, right? I met a Zimbabwean coach, Brian de Villiers, who was there. Now, you know what? It goes back, to be honest. I think we're cutting it short. Because before I moved to the US, I had a coach from Zimbabwe who was part of the ITF coaching program, which every coaches go through that, because that's your level 1, level 2, level 3. So I had a coach, TJ Mashonga. He was the one who kind of said, TK, I'm going to take you underneath your wing. We want you to be like a tennis player. He didn't talk about professional so much and things, but he cared for my development. But then he left for England, just for the way he was looking at it. He had better opportunities for his life and his career. It's normal, you do that. Then I was left there, and then my family, my dad also had some exposure of being overseas, which is a very important part when families or parents have that exposure, because they have a free will to let your kids go out and try that. If you don't have, the parents don't have that exposure, it's very hard to let your son go. So after my coach left to England, I moved to the US. I had a very good friend of mine, family friend of mine, who became our brother, Fungo Mahefo. He introduced me to this coach called Brian de Villiers, and then he was also from Zimbabwe, and then he took me under his wing, and then I moved. He was my coach in the US.
Where in Atlanta?
Yeah, in Atlanta at 13. And then we have been like, he was like a father to me here in the US. You know, when I look at it, because like, if anything happened for me, he's the guy, people who will be there, too. Yeah, just in general law and in guardianship. That's what he did, and he's just always been there. Not now, but because he's not like TK will be able to handle himself. But you had that, then you had my brother that I told you. So that supporting cast was very important for me.
Wow.
Yeah, I know you need to have that good supporting cast, and that's where we do lack, as well as for the junior players who do come to Africa. There's always this part, like, we're giving rackets, we're doing this, but come on. I mean, it's not knocking that off, but you're asking me about playing Dimitrov, who's like making many millions. At that time, am I making many millions? No, but I was in a better position. Then you have somebody that you're giving equipment to and stuff. It's like just growing the game, but it's not that clear cut. Dude, go do this, go do that, go do this. Are you gonna make it? Maybe not. Are you gonna make it? Maybe yes.
Just this is what you should do.
Yes, this is what you should do. That's what the challenge is.
I'm gonna a little related to this, TK, with all of these things. You've mentioned, right? African. When you look at tennis, look at junior tennis, look at the draws. Africa as a continent, probably one of the biggest, lot of people, lot of talent. Why is it so hard to find African players in that top level?
This goes back. Go ahead.
Question number one. Question number two. Do you think in the next 5-10 years we would have a top 10 African player?
Oh man, that's a loaded one, to be honest, because look, I do research, I've looked into my path, but I don't want to go speak because I have not been top 10 yet, right? On the ATP men's tour. I've not been top 50 yet on the ATP men's tour. I've not been top 100 yet. But do the kids have the drive or vision or dream to do that? They all have that. But then for me, you're always looking into the scheduling for the players, the support system for the players, and the major thing. And don't quote it as a major thing, like TK said, you need to have money.
Yeah.
It's important because it's a sport that you're using resources daily. You're paying hotels, you're paying car rentals, you're paying meals, you're paying court time, you're paying rackets, you're paying equipment, you're paying a lot of stuff. Easy 7, 8, 9, 10 grand monthly. You understand? Not per year or 2 years, monthly. That means you're blowing 120K for you to be like, listen, this guy's a program. But other nations have people who subsidize these things. The corporate companies are obliged, in economics and business, and like, the nations, you have to have the businesses do, what do you call that stuff? There were taxes, the things, corporate taxes that they do supposed to be helping these things. It happens
so
naturally. It's the economy, gives them a soft landing to be able to do that. But we don't have that in Africa. So it's not just money, but just how you, even as a tennis player, feel like I am responsible for this corporate that also is assisting me in my career path. It builds a different culture. These people are treating me. It's business. Some people are cutthroat, but you gotta feel like these people are taking care of me. It's not really only coming from my mom and dad. These people are like really taking care of me as a country. You have that pride of that, and it lacks for us. So it's not a clear-cut thing. There's a lot of complexities within that. Like I tell you, for me, yes, my family was able to use a string shoe budget to make things work for me. It worked out to a certain degree, 288, which is limiting my vision. Like I keep telling you about that at 17. But then you have the people who have actually gone through that road. Do they have a pathway for me? Do they have advice for me to be able to get to that top 100, top 50, top 10? Which I have. I had that vision, but they're like it's in a video game. They're cheat codes that you can use. It's not really like in a bad, it's a negative connotation when you say cheat code, but there are ways that you can make life a little bit easier. And we don't have that, which I'm willing to sort of help kids do that. But hopefully the ITF comes in and the nation comes in and they'll be like, what do you think? And then we can work something around that.
TK, talking about this, connecting it to that, you founded the is it Time Greatness?
Oh, Total Greatness.
Total Greatness, yeah. You founded that academy. What is the inspiration behind that, and what are you looking to achieve with that?
Excuse me. That's also not a one-word answer, because speaking about good teams, shout out to my manager at that time, and hopefully he's still my manager now. Takanyi, he's got a lot of sport. We worked together for a few years, from 2014 or 2013, for a few years after that. But total greatness, like I told you, from my first coach, I was telling you, we moved to the UK. He's like, this is when I was a little younger. TK, you are a person who's of value to the nation, and even goes beyond globally to the continent. At that time, when I was really playing, the minister, not the minister, the mayor of your city should be able to give you some land to build tennis courts. And I was like, man, he's talking about that. What am I going to do about that? Fine, that didn't work. No, that didn't work. I didn't pursue it.
Oh, you didn't, yeah.
Next time, I'm in Lagos. Some time ago, like I was in Lagos, and they're like, one of, you have always these people working up in tennis. Like, TK, man, what are you doing? Who's going to be the next Takanyi after you? Yeah. Like, in general, like literally, like I was one of the top seeds in Governor's Cup, excuse me, all these tournaments. And then that goes your vision. Who's the next person after me? It plants, all of these things plant a seed in your mind. So after that, it's like, there's my first coach, there's being in Lagos, there's my manager, there's me. My family was really more into legacy. So it's not one thing that kept that inspiration. It's like a whole family.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are you looking to achieve with this foundation?
Big story. I think we spoke about this the other day. It's building relationships. Building relationships makes people sort of like trust you, hopefully, in the long run. Within that relationship, somebody else comes and like feeds into that. Someone else comes and feeds into that. That's how legacies are sort of like built. So what's my vision? Like initially, it's like, okay, we want to create tournaments for kids to play, because I grew up playing tournaments. But that didn't happen. But then when you're on the ground and you're seeing like all of these other avenues where people are struggling with, you come out there and say, listen, let's have an avenue of education. Let's have an avenue of kids who we can find a way to get scholarships. They got this new UTR, Universal Tennis Rating, that's like big there. Let's introduce that with the, all of these things start opening up. But I can't give you a simple answer, because if I give you a vision for, I could be selling my shop myself. But the thing is like, is for kids to have that global exposure, because that's where we are right now not as an organization, but just globally. That's where we're at. Like people like, listen, I'm speaking to someone who in Hong Kong right now, and they want me to come for a coaching job. I'm sure you've got like several offers from that. But imagine where you were. We're looking at coaches, we're looking at players, because if you look at coaches, they'll create a player. The coach says, I came from this organization, let them help you. You can look at a player, I came from this organization, I played this tournament, this is where I need to go. So there's so many layers there, so I don't want to limit it. It's really about global exposure and education, right?
TK, rounding up, it's like a lot of insightful, conversation.
Right.
So rounding up, if for a young player in Africa that's looking up to Takanyi, looking up to you, and maybe even do more. What is the word, your word of advice to that young African player?
That's where it becomes very complex for me, in more of self-inquiry, introspection stuff. We have created a game for you. Tennis is there globally. You just don't look at Takanyi, right? You may look at me, but I want you to ask yourself a question. Do you really want that? Is Takanyi the person you really want to be like? It's a very difficult. People go back and forth with that. So when you say that that's where I want to be,
Yeah.
Why do you want to do that? Because at the end of the day, it's like I'm retired now, but you're a role model. I'm not taking away myself from that, but I want a kid to actually ask themselves that question in depth. Why did Takanyi come and say he's my role model? Where is he? What's his story? Where has he been? Like, why is he such a great people? Why do people look up to him so much? Because I still have my own challenges. But this kid probably has his. Maybe his challenges are worse than mine. And then he's actually, I feel like maybe at his age, he has more of a challenge. So I don't want to let kids be like, oh, hey, TK, you want to be like Takanyi? Oh, it's complimentary. It's good for the ego to be like these people, like, look up to me. But I want a kid to ask, like, what do I really want? I'm playing tennis right now. I'm watching tennis on TV. I'm watching all these people. But what do I really want? If they feel like, hey, I can come to TK and if he's my role model, I'll give them the answers they do need. But I always want kids to have that self-introspection. You know, listen, it's not easy. It's not easy, but that's why I got to.
Yeah, that's it. But TK, thank you so much. It's such a nice time, and hopefully we can have you back here. Maybe have you back.
No, you're gonna have
maybe in Zimbabwe or somewhere.
No, you're gonna come.
But thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you so much.